Great, thank you. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending. I appreciate your coming out to our session here. And I appreciate the AFCEA for inviting us to speak at this event as well. So today we're going to talk a lot about networks, about network operations, the processes and the automation around those networks. Let me introduce myself here. I'm Mike Bim, so I'm part of ServiceNow, and I work within our telecom and technology architecture group. Spend most of my time working with customers on large, complex networks and the processes and the tools that ServiceNow offers on our platform to drive automation and efficiency in those areas. What I really am is someone who loves networks, and walking around this floor is pretty incredible. We got a lot of our partners here, technology partners. We work with a lot of the equipment vendors, integrate them into our workflows, so this is a great event. And hopefully a lot of interested and excited network folks in the audience here as well. You're definitely not alone. So what we're finding is globally there's a lot of critical transformation going on in the network space. We have operators around the world focusing on modernizing their network infrastructure, but also their network operations. And the Army is at the forefront of this transformation. The initiatives at the Army, the U.S. Global Unified Networks and the Unified Network Operations initiatives are definitely well within the foray of what we're talking about here today. I'm going to focus a lot on process and data, a little bit on intelligence, both human and artificial intelligence at the end. But really what we're focused on here is driving automation and efficiency, and doing that by better understanding the data and connecting people and process together. So let's dive into the presentation here. When we look at organizations, what we typically find is that there's a structured front office, mid and back office. And when requests or demands come in, this could be a request for a new network deployment, it could be demand for new capacity, it could also be just someone with a problem or an incident or something they need resolved on the service and network side. The front office is typically quite good at accepting those requests and bringing them in, but what happens then is it hits the mid and the back office, and we see a lot of siloed systems and a lot of broken processes in that layer. So if you look at that back area there, what you tend to encounter is a number of disparate systems, people swivel chairing between these systems. Sometimes there's integrations, but they're more point-to-point. There's no unified process. And the process of how work gets done really lives within people's heads and experience, and method and procedures and other documentation that they follow. If you were to look at that as a network, it looks a little bit like a network, but not a really well-designed network. So it's missing resiliency. Data is not always connected. You're running into delays and latency and problems where you have no visibility or no monitoring as well. So not only is it hard to funnel work through the organization, it's also very hard to understand where the problems are, because the metrics, the notifications, the delayed, the fallout tasks are not well tracked within these organizations. So what ServiceNow brings to the table is really a process-focused approach. On our platform, what we call the Now platform, we drive end-to-end workflows to connect all of those systems and bring our own capabilities as well with the platform and our applications that run on that platform. So now what you have is, from the time a request hits the front door, that request runs end-to-end in a managed and tracked process that is monitored, that can be optimized. You can understand where the challenges and the bottlenecks are within that process. So if this was a request for a new network build, all the way from initiating that request, kicking off a project management, running that project, tracking those tasks, driving change management, designing the network, making efficient use of assets, and ultimately delivering and deploying that network out into the field so that it can be monitored and assured on day one, is driven end-to-end on the platform. That doesn't necessarily mean we're providing all the components. We do a lot of work with our partners to integrate to the likes of Juniper and Palo Alto and Fortinet and Viavi to drive out to their systems, and we act as a system of action on top of these components. And the real goal here is that once you can track and manage your process, you can then start to measure that process. And with that measurement, you can start to optimize. You can understand where your bottlenecks are. You can understand how to improve those bottlenecks, how to drive automation in the right place, not just automation for the sake of automation. Okay? So that's really the fundamental nature of our platform, is workflow and intelligence and automation. And then on top of that, we deliver different applications that help you drive these major milestones, these major functional blocks. In my area, which is the telecom domain, we provide a number of applications for our telecom and technology providers. Now, the word telecom is a fuzzy word. What it really means to us is any sufficiently complex, large-scale network that requires you to plan, design, deliver, order, and assure that network. So we have data center customers, large utility customers. We have the largest telcos around the world using us to manage their various network domains. And within our product, all built on the Now platform, we focus in these major areas of plan and build, scheduling, dispatching your people out of that plan to go and deploy those components, what we call our field service management, delivering, so from the time you receive a network order, how do you manage all of the fulfillment processes, how do you get the right equipment, how do you design and activate and dispatch those folks, and then on the day that the equipment hits the field and is deployed and turned on, you need to be able to manage those services and networks, and that's where our service management and our assurance components take flight. You may know us as a ticketing company. We have a long history in IT ticketing and also network operations ticketing. But beyond that, we do case management, we do change management, we do event and performance management on the network side. And what we'll talk about today really is kind of the front side of this arc around network inventory, project management, and field deployment. So how do you take a request for a network? How do you plan that efficiently? How do you make sure you show up with the right equipment? And how do you send the right people with the right skills to get that deployed within your network? Yep, so that's really our suite that we offer. Over on our booth, you'll see we have a number of other components that this builds on, our customer service, our operations management. These are all functional building blocks that build on the platform and on those core capabilities. If we drive a little bit into the data area here, what we're finding is that data doesn't live in a consolidated system within these environments. So when a problem comes into the environment, people are typically swivel chairing, they're looking into spreadsheets, they're looking into Visio diagrams, they're trying to figure out what the network looks like, how it's connected, logging into different management systems to understand the nature and the scale of that problem. What they're really lacking is a trusted system, a trusted source that they can go to understand where that data lives, how they can make decisions against that trusted data source, and how they can effectively automate against that trusted data source. If you don't understand the data correctly, then the automation is going to make the wrong decisions, it's going to send people out with the wrong equipment, with the wrong patch cables, it's going to try and allocate bandwidth where the capacity is not available. All of this information should live within a trusted inventory source. This becomes more complex as the network evolves. Virtualized networks, 5G drove a lot of virtualization, 5G advanced with non-terrestrial networks. There's a lot of new network deployments, new equipment that's coming onto the field as well that also needs to be tracked and managed and captured within these systems. So what we're doing within the inventory space is we're really focused on how do you get an accurate view of your inventory, and then how do you connect all of those other processes we talked about, the dispatch, the repair, the install, back to that data so that you can automate and drive workflows and drive people with the right components out to the field. Okay. In the inventory space then, what we offer is a component called network inventory. And really what it allows you to do is on the Now platform, you may be familiar with what's called a CMDB. It's kind of our network resource data model that has been used on the IT side for many years. We've extended that into the telecom and into the network domain with complex concepts like cables and strands, physical and logical connections, circuit hierarchies and protection, virtualized equipment. All of the components, topologies and channelization, all the things that you need to truly understand these complex telecom networks or data networks that you're deploying. So now you can take your CMDB, which is where you're already doing incident management, where you're already doing change management. You can extend that to a full network inventory, capture all of that information, what's in this rack at this location, what's in this cabinet, how is it connected, is it running on my fiber, is it running on a third-party fiber? All of that information can be in your CMDB so that when you receive an incident or when you receive a request, you can drive that right back down into that trusted data source that you've been using on the IT side for many years. So network inventory for us is a number of data model extensions on the CMDB, a number of visualizations that you've probably been seeing pop up here that really let you understand. It's not just about accurate data, but you need to understand what this looks like. You don't have to always run to a whiteboard and draw your topology. You don't always have to go look at a Visio diagram to figure out what was in that rack 3 months ago. You can go right into the system, understand where your rack capacity is, what equipment's there, drive into the equipment, understand what cards, what pluggables, what patch cables. So now when you send somebody out to site, you're sending them with the knowledge and the components that they need to perform their job effectively. So all of this is bundled on top of the CMDB. It comes as a component, which then integrates into these other components that I mentioned about as well. We do topology visualization, circuit visualization. Circuits for us can be physical or logical connections. They can be DWDM, they can be OTN, Ethernet, IP, MPLS. We support all the different domains that you'll find within your modern networks as well. And then what this starts to look like then is how do you connect that inventory data that we have to the other components that I've been talking about. So what you'll see typically is there's a planning stage. How do you plan out this project of deploying a new site or a number of new sites? How do you plan a capacity augmentation? We use a component called strategic portfolio management that lets you capture that entire plan within the platform and drive each of those tasks to the right people or to the right automation workflows within the system. That can drive then network change against your accurate source of truth, being able to make sure that you allocate the right equipment out of your stock rooms, put that equipment in the right locations, and then build up a change model, a plan change effectively of your design of what you're going to roll out to the system. That change then drives field dispatch and other workflows, activation, provisioning. So now you've understood your design, you've managed it at a project, you can drive those people out with the right truck stock, they can take the right equipment to the right place and configure that network appropriately. Okay. Then once you're done deploying the network and it's operational, that network inventory is not done its life. It's there for assurance as well. So if I have a fiber cut, how do I know immediately all the impacted sites, all the impacted connections that are riding on that fiber? By leveraging these complex relationships within the CMDB, you can tell immediately this fiber has these strands, is supporting these optical channels, all the way up to your end-to-end connections to your sites and your equipment that's deployed. So when a case now comes in for a service problem, you have full access to the network information, the trusted data. And what we've done is we've enhanced our problem management capability on the case side to then drive out automated testing. So how do I know what it's performing right now? I run a test. I run a series of diagnostic tests. I take that test data back into the system, and then I make decisions based off that accurate information. So our test and measurement capability that we've introduced in our last release allows us to leverage our knowledge of the system and leverage your active testing capabilities to do better problem resolution within the system itself. And this is also an area where we started to introduce some AI. So if you've ever seen an OTDR trace, I don't know if you've ever seen a fiber cut, you get back a very complex set of data as to where that cut is. We've applied AI to summarize those test results and tell you, is this a pass or fail? And what is the root information you need to do to update that case or that incident so that somebody can go resolve that. So if you run 3 or 4 service tests, You want to be able to summarize those test results into an update on the case. You want to be able to take that information and drive it to the work order for the person who's going to go out and fix that issue. So here we're reaching out to the likes of Viavi and other test and measurement systems that are deployed in the real world. We're using our knowledge of the network itself, and we're combining that together with generative AI to do a summarization of the problem that needs to be resolved in the system. So now that you've moved into the assurance side of the world, you can do better mean time to repair, you can resolve these issues faster, you're understanding the exact problem because you're using testing to narrow this down and understand what actually needs to be resolved. And then if we talk just a little bit on the end here about generative AI, we've had at ServiceNow AI on our platform for several releases. AI has been there for natural language understanding, for predictive analytics, for AI operations. What we did a couple releases ago was we launched our generative AI, we call it Now Assist. And the whole idea of Now Assist is that if you're already using us for case management, if you're already using us for incident or field or alert management, you can enable Now Assist and you get a whole new set of skills where the system is helping you take the mundane work that people are performing today and automate that work through generative AI. So if you look at where a lot of time is spent on cases and incidents, it's people going through activity logs to write the problem statement at the end of that case. Or when they're handing a case off to an incident to the NOC side, summarizing those case information to set that information over to the tier 2 operator who needs to go resolve that. We now have skills available on the platform that will automatically summarize your activity lists, that will automatically generate those case notes and drive that into your incident, and even do alert summarization, and now the test and measurement do test summarization as well. So the benefit here is you're already using the system, your people are already doing these manual activities. You can take the mundane steps that they really spend a lot of time on at the end of each case or in each transition. You can summarize that and still give it back to the human for control. So we really believe this is truly an assist, it's not a replacement. And what we find is from the 5 minutes they used to spend to write that, they're now spending 20, 30 seconds reviewing it. They're accepting that, and you're cutting all of that time out of the process. And we had a customer, a commercial customer, leverage this recently. They turned it on. They'd already been using us for service management across their organization. It's public. They announced it's British Telecom. There's a press release out there. British Telecom turned this on just for case and took out 33% of their mean time to resolve on their cases. Because all of this time that people were spending writing these summaries, doing these handoffs. So they really only applied a couple of these skills, and it had an immediate impact on their business. They still retained control, the people were still in charge, but they could drive then more volume, they could do more cases, they could do more activities on the system. What you'll also find is these skills span out into other areas, like who likes to write a knowledge article? What if the system could take all of your cases and generate a knowledge article for you and say, we've seen this activity across these cases, we've seen how it resolved, we've seen the problem statements, here's a new knowledge article, review this and add it to your knowledge base. So knowledge generation, workflow generation, all of these skills are available as part of this Now Assist capability. And this has been generally available now for a couple releases, and the GovCloud just recently available as well. So I think that's my time, if I understood this correctly. I wanted to leave a couple minutes for any questions at the end, but also if you have a chance, make sure to visit our booth just around the corner. And again, thank you for all the time. Happy to answer any questions over at the booth there for the next couple hours as well. Any questions anybody had on any of those parts? Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Really good information. You hit on the fact that the Army's already tied in with ServiceNow and ASMP. So, some really good tools and capabilities there for visualization. I think we see a lot of the customer-facing data, but there's another aspect that you hit on when you talk about networks. And we have a large amount of data through USEAM and Gabriel Nimbus and other tools that we rely on other platforms to help visualize.
Yep.
So trying to understand from an industry perspective what ServiceNow is doing to work with other partners to help cross-level those data planes so that we can basically take ServiceNow data and kind of compare it with what we're seeing from other tools that are available to the Army?
Yeah, great question. So, what we spend a lot of time in the business unit I'm in with technology and telecom, a lot of our customers are the technology providers that you see on the floor here. So Viavi is using ServiceNow, Juniper, Fortinet, Palo, all of these technology providers that you guys are using in your environment. And so what we've started doing is releasing store apps that pre-integrate to their controllers, for example. So we have a pre-integration today between ServiceNow and the Juniper Mist controller. If you're deploying Juniper Mist, which we've been running internally in ServiceNow for several years, you can automate the provisioning. You can bring their data as the device calls home to their controller. You can bring that data right into the CMDB, and then you can receive alerts and information from their own controller AI into our operations management as well. And so that pattern of us working directly with the equipment vendors that are sitting here, they're all of our, not all, but many of them are our partners today. We're going to continue that. You'll see more and more of these apps in the store. And those apps typically are available to you because you have both sides. So the app is really just an integration piece. When we say store, it's less commercial, more here's available connectors that you guys have. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you. I think that's my 20 minutes, but appreciate your time.